let's bring in our special guest joining us and talk a little bit about the law. We've got with us the attorney who represents the family of Breonna Taylor. Lanita Baker is with us. And criminal defense attorney Lara Uretzian is with us as well. Welcome to you both. Great to have you with us. I want to put up on the screen, this is some, when it comes to aiding and abetting in Minnesota, there was a case in 2007 that added, that laid out a couple of the elements that I think makes it a little bit more difficult for prosecutors, kind of an extra hurdle that they have. They've got to prove that the defendant knew that his alleged accomplices were going to commit a crime. Okay, so here, I guess these three officers would have to know that Chauvin was going to commit a crime or the other officers were going to commit a crime, and they intended his presence or actions to further the commission of the crime. So they were there, or their actions were intended to further the commission of the crime. All right, Larry Uretzian, I'll begin with you. What do you think about prosecutors having to prove that these three knew that a crime was going to be committed? It's almost like, you know, aiding and abetting, like you kind of plan it or you have an idea, but that clearly wasn't the situation here. So at what point are prosecutors, you think, going to argue that he knew his alleged accomplices were going to commit a crime here?
Well, I mean, as far as with each officer, it's going to be a little different as far as the position that the prosecution is going to take. But I think what the prosecution is going to have to focus on is the crowd screaming that he's not breathing, the crowd seeing what kind of a problem is in front of them, and the officers, they must have known too. Thao, for example, you've got a crowd conversing with him, screaming, telling him, go check the pulse, telling him that this man needs to be rolled over, that he can't breathe. He can hear George Floyd screaming at some points that he can't breathe. The crowd is getting rowdier and rowdier. So you think at that point he's got some kind of notice that something is really, really wrong with the way that this particular arrest is being handled. So maybe I'm assuming that that's what the prosecution is going to focus on, that if the crowd can see that, then an officer like Thao should have known that. And as a senior officer, should have at least interfered or intervened.
But it's not should have known, actually knows.
In this case, knows, because he's hearing it. Basically, he's hearing it. Maybe he doesn't know that he has no pulse, but at the least, he knows the crowd is telling him the man is not breathing anymore. And I don't know if you could overhear some of the other officers saying that there's no Keung, I think at some point says that there's no pulse. I'm not sure if he overheard that, but he's getting notice at this point. The entire crowd is telling him that he knows something is wrong and is doing nothing about it.
Okay, Lanita, so from your perspective, how do you think prosecutors have to approach this to prove that these other three officers know that the accomplice is going to commit a crime, and they are there to make sure to further the commission of that crime? That's why we're there. We're doing this to make sure that my accomplice can commit this crime.
Yeah, I think that the prosecutor is going to have to focus on at what point during the 9 minutes and 29-second incident did it become apparent to these officers that Derek Chauvin was committing a crime. And so with Lane, you know, you want to use do we want to roll him over on his side? And when Derek Chauvin says no, he's like, okay, if that's the way you want to roll, like he doesn't do anything to stop it. Obviously, he knew something was wrong at that time, or he would not have asked, do you want to roll him over? So at that point, you get Lane. With Thao, I agree with fellow counsel in that it's when at the point he's hearing everything go on and he's hearing the other officers saying, check his pulse, do this, and the same with Keung. So I don't think you can go, no, the officers or, you know, Chauvin and Keung didn't know at the time, or Thao didn't know at the time that they were driving to the incident that Derek Chauvin was going to commit a crime. But it's at what point during that 9 minutes and 29 seconds did they realize the likelihood that Derek Chauvin could die? And I think all of them at different times said different things to let you know that the risk that they posed, and they failed to stop him. They gave deference to Chauvin, and that's where they are culpable.
Right. So Lara, we're talking about a state of mind here, right? What do you think is it intellectually honest to say that the two rookies there are like, okay, Chauvin's committed a crime, let's see if we can help him? Or is it two rookies who are there who are like, this guy's, was my training officer. He's there for 20 years. I guess I got to go along with the way he's handling the situation because he told us the medics are on the way, and we just are. What is really happening here? Because I'm always interested in the actual truth of the state of mind. Are these guys really aiding and abetting and thinking that, okay, let's commit this crime together. Let's make sure Chauvin can kill this man. Let's make sure Chauvin can assault this man. That's why we're here?
I mean, obviously it's going to be a harder sell with the two rookies. The two rookies, especially Lane, he even suggests to a superior, a higher ranking officer, Chauvin at the time, hey, shouldn't we roll him over? I'm suspecting excited delirium. This is something he's learned in his training, right? And he's bringing it to the attention of a training officer, someone who's a higher ranking officer who's got 19, 20, whatever, 15, 16, 19 years over him. He's only been on the job for 4 days. 4 days is nothing. He's a baby in the field. So of course the argument by the defense is going to be, no, he's not trying to kill this man. He's just listening to an officer who he believes knows a lot more than he does, has the experiences, telling him, hey, listen, the ambulance is on the way. So he's just, okay, he tries it and he stops thinking that's what he's supposed to do. What is he supposed to do otherwise? They're a team. There's 4 guys here together, right? And what we would need to know, what are the policies? What do you do if you disagree with a higher ranking officer? Was there anything he could have done? Should he have come back and said, hey, he's dying, we need to roll him over? Should he have said it 4 times, 5 times, 10 times? Where do you draw the line? So it's going to be an interesting one to watch. And I see him on the witness stand.
Yeah, I think it's very possible.
Stand.
They all can take the stand.
Yeah.
Julia, Janae, has the prosecution tipped their hand at all about how they intend to meet these elements of aiding and abetting?
They have in their responses to those motion to dismisses that came many months ago. They're also looking ahead to try and add third-degree murder charges to the cases of these 3 defendants. They believe that they also are responsible for doing conduct that was eminently dangerous to another person, that was depraved mind, and that ultimately is third-degree murder in Minnesota. So they do believe that this was no doubt something where they knew what was going on, because as officers, it was reasonable for them to understand based on what they were perceiving, similar to how we saw them argue it in the case of Derek Chauvin. They were perceiving these facts, and any reasonable person should have known that Derek Chauvin was killing this person and that they could have stopped it.
Lenita, I'll give you the final word on all this. Do you see these 3 officers in the same light as Derek Chauvin?
I absolutely do. And while a lot has been made about what the verdict against Derek Chauvin means for the criminal justice system, I think that was a slam dunk. We should have gotten a guilty conviction against Derek Chauvin. But it's how the trial will turn out against these 3 officers that are going to really tell us how America is the criminal justice system really changing. Because it's what do we do when officers stand by and do nothing to stop fellow officers from committing heinous acts. So it still goes to that accountability. These officers, if Derek Chauvin was not a law enforcement officer, if he was a man on the street, they would have had an obligation to save George Floyd's life. And it should be no different that the person committing the egregious act was a police officer. So they should be held just as accountable.
All right. This is going to be some trial. And again, scheduled for the summer right now. Julie, Janae, we will speak again at the top of the hour. Thank you so much. When we come back, our guests will stay with us, Lenita Baker and Lara Uretzian. We're going to talk about the next big trial here on Court TV. It involves a man accused of murdering his fiancée. But there's another little fact involved with this. He was already married to another woman for more than 2 decades. We'll unravel it when we come back.